Hi, I'm Jack Dennis. For years, I've come to Canada to lecture about fly fishing in streams. When I come to Canada, I find out they know far more about lake fishing than I'll ever know. Over the years, I've had a chance to meet some wonderful Canadian lake fishermen and fly tyers. A few years back, a friend of mine by the name of Brian Chan, and many of you know that name, introduced me to a man sitting next to me here, Phil Rowley. I had a chance to view his flies at the Canadian Fly Fishing Show last year, and I invited him to tie some flies for us, and he said, wait a minute, you got to come up to Canada if you're going to tie some flies, and I'm going to show you how to fish them. So Phil, we're in your home country.
Well, thanks for inviting me along, Jack, and I hope to show you some of our techniques and some of the flies that are successful not only here in Canada, but all over the world.
People that are going to get this video aren't going to really see it. Sure. And you know, it's just as it comes. So make sure when you do that to tell people about the size range. One thing I found here to Canada, they use a lot bigger chironomids up in Canada than what we use here.
Well, that's a good point, Jack, because as you go further north in latitude, pretty well no matter what it is, mammal or insect, they get bigger. Like a moose in Alaska is bigger than a moose down here. That's just, I guess, Mother Nature's way of compensating them for living in such a cold, horrible place sometimes.
How come everybody in Canada aren't bigger than that?
Oh, I don't into that. So what we're doing here is I've just got some very fine, this is Uniwire again, this is the gold, you could use copper. And again, this is the collaborator color scheme, but you know, expand your mind if you will, and just think of all the different color combinations you can do. So I'm tying that, if you'll notice, down the side of the shank. And again, to keep the fly skinny, I'm trying to distribute the materials around all four sides of the fly, if you will. So the fly will stay skinny. So I just put that in there, and we just got put that in a little material clip. And now we can put a red butt on here if we want. And again, this is Mylar again, the holographic red. The red butts are popular on chironomids because many species retain the hemoglobin, residual hemoglobin from the larval stage. And it collects in the tip of the abdomen and along the abdominal body segment. So that's why red is such a common butt or rib color on many chironomid patterns. So we're going to imitate the red butt by just putting a little tiny piece of very narrow mylar. You could also use red holographic flashable. You could use red thread if you wanted. But the mylar is kind of neat. So we're just going to wrap that around. And again, see how skinny I'm keeping this? This is 8/0 thread I've got on here now. And on occasion I will tie smaller ones using 10/0. So we just get that in place, try not to cut the thread or fray it. And we're just going to trim that off and then get that tying thread up the shank of the hook to where you envision the thorax is going to be. And that's going to be about 1/3 or 1/4 back from the hook eye.
Is that red thread?
No, this is actually brown because again we're going to use a translucent material. This is kind of a rusty brown that complements the body color we're using. And this is a product, you may have heard it's called midge braid, or in other names it's called frostbite. It's a woven, like a flashabou type material. It makes great wing cases and shell backs. But for chironomids what we do, this is probably on my website, the #1 question I get asked, how the heck do I work with what is it? How do I work with it? Frostbites and midge braids. So how we work with it with chironomids, if I was to tie that in a form of body, it's just too darn bulky. So what I do is I grab both ends and just gently pull, and it'll unravel into 2 strands right here. There's 2 strands there. So I'll moisten it. Now it's been in a raveled state most of its natural life, so to unravel it, it wants to return to what it was. So what I want to do is, rather than just try and grab this thing, because I want to use the entire length, I'm just going to get it on the shank and then I'll get it in position. And one of the easiest ways to do is to come up under the fly, take the material, it's on my side of the tying thread, and I'm just going to lift up and lift it under the thread, and it's on. So I just went under the tying thread and pulled it on. Now it's in place. I can take one extra wrap for luck. Now it's onto the shank. Now all I'm going to do is gently pull on it and play a little poker with myself, a little roulette. And just pull, because I don't want to lose any material. That's as lucky as I'm feeling. Now I put the extra wraps and that's in place. And now I'm just going to take this and go down the shank to the butt. And then when I get to that red butt, I'm going to stop, reverse my direction, and come back. And when you overwrap a material with itself, it becomes more durable because it's got to unravel under itself, which is hard to do. And obviously it also gives you a chance to fill in any gaps you've missed. Now this, typically when you pull on this like this, it unravels to, I don't know, maybe an inch and a quarter or so. You can tell I'm a fisherman, right? Inch and a quarter. Probably a number 12 2X hook is about as long as you can use this material in this unraveled state. You will get those rare days you pull on it and the whole thing unravels to about 6 or 7 inches. You need to buy a lottery ticket as well, because it doesn't happen very often. So there's other materials we use then, like flashaboos and crystal flashes. But I just want to show you that material. Now we're just going to take our ribbing material. I'm going to put one rib right behind the butt just to protect it a bit. And then just come forward. Try not to catch or unravel. And again, just get into that rhythm. And you can see how skinny this fly is. It's about hook diameter. And on smaller flies, I place this fine gold wire with a gold strand of crystal flash, or gold thread, or some thinner material, because sometimes the wire builds up too much. So again, we're going to secure this along the shank and the thorax area to keep everything uniform. And when I get near the eye, now I'm going to pull. So far this fly just looks like the last one I tied, right? Skinny body, wire rib, what's the big deal? Where this fly changes is in the thorax region, where we replace the bead, because in selective conditions, trout can become, they seem to know those shiny ones with the gold heads and whatever, those sting. So they avoid them. So these ones are a more realistic representation. So this is the Stillwater Solutions midge gill. You could use poly yarn, marabou. This is a very soft yarn with a little bit of sparkle yarn. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tie this in place. Don't crowd the eye. Maybe one eye width back. I'm going to secure it. This is one strand of unravel. I'm going to come in with my scissors, trim it on a bit of an angle. And now we're just going to cover that up, again with a minimum of wraps. We're going to have basically a thread thorax on this fly. So again, we just cover this up, keep everything skinny. See how skinny that is? That's not very fat at all. We're going to give it a little bit of pizzazz. So this Mirage tinsel, I love this stuff. Great for shellbacks, and that's what we're going to do. Put a little wing case in here. So I've got the fly. I'm going to tie this flat on the top of the shank. So just make sure that's in position on top, and secure it down. So it's laying flat like this. And you see how that really, again, these mylars, these pearly mylars, are just catch the sun and give the fly a nice glint. Now we're going to add some wing pads and make this realistic. And for the wing pads, you could use mylars, but a lot of times the chironomid larvae, their wing pads become an orangey coloration. There's one I cut. So these stretch flosses work really well. This is a lycra-based stuff. Donna used to make her clothes out of this. That's why we use it. What I'm going to do is a technique called doubling, and I do this a lot when I'm tying bodies materials, where you want to take flashaboo and turn 2 strands into 4, or you want to put rubber legs on a fly, is you actually take the material, I put it onto my forefinger. Use my forefinger to hold it on the barrel of the bobbin. There's equal amounts of material on either side, and I just sort of gather, and now I've looped that material around the thread, and I can position this anywhere I want just by manipulating my thread and the thread pressure and put it anywhere. And what I want to do with this, as I let go of it, is to put it on the underside of the shank. So I've got it right at the eye, and now I'm just going to secure it back underneath. And I'm pulling on this, as you can see. Let's get that one strand out of there. And if that's too many strands coming off, just a little bit of spit. And we're just going to secure this back along all the way. I'm pulling on this quite, stretch this out as much as I can. And again, you can see how skinny that thorax is, because we're going to build this up with the coating. So now I'm just going to have a quick look at the thorax. I've done a reasonably good job of keeping it, covering everything up. I've spun the thread again to flatten the wraps. And then come forward. I'm going to pull the shell back over. Tie her off. Fold it back. Locks it in place. Trim. And now I'm going to form my wing pads. And all I'm going to do is take these two strands that are now trailing sort of down and back and pull them up. I'll do the near one first. There's one on one side, I don't know if you can see that. And then one on the other side. Now the back side one comes undone. I'm just going to roll the fly so I can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to hold this in place, pull on it to tighten, and then another wrap for luck. Now when you tie those in place, you want to tie them so you don't pull too tightly. Because you can, if you trim them, there's only a couple of wraps holding, they could spring back out. In fact, a lot of times you can just take, and I will expose these and secure them in front. That helps stand up the gill material so you can tie on the fly, and then I pull on it to reduce bulk, and do likewise on the other side and just trim. And then we're going to whip finish without bouncing the bobbin so everything comes unraveled. And again, we don't need 2 to 3 wraps is all we need, because we're going to coat this fly to give it durability and shine. Now I'm going to leave those gills long right now, because this becomes my handle. Because I am now going to coat this fly from one end to the other. Make sure there's no little fibers sticking out of it. With the first coat is brushable super glue. Complete with little hairs stuck in it. So we're just going to start and just right over everything but the white gills. Up the sides, down, underneath. And that fuses everything. So we are going to let that dry, although with the heat from these lights, it's not going to take too long, I don't think. And then after, you have lots of different body coatings. You could mix rod winding epoxy. You could use Loon's UV knot sense, or the UV fly finish. Lots of different materials like that. Or you can take some good old Sally Hansen's hard as nails and put 2 or 3 coats, thin coats on this. And what this is going to do is build up a little clear envelope around the whole fly that very much suggests the outer exoskeleton of the pupa, because it inflates itself with the gases and the adults inside. In the pupa, it's like a little bag around the adult that it uses as a vehicle to get up to the surface. So we're going to build this up. So that's why you can see how skinny this fly has to stay. There's a little stranded something there, so I'll get rid of that. And it's critical. On small flies, a lot of times it's just a thread body. I'll just rotate that around. And those gills, when I'm finished the coating process, will be trimmed so they're about half the length of the thorax. But right now, they're a handy thing to hang on to. A lot of times when I'm at home doing these flies, I will build a bunch of them and then put them on a little drying wheel. So I use this as my handle to get on there so I don't stick the fly on. So hopefully this heat lamp that I'm sitting under has, I don't know if you can see it, but it's got a little, it's got a little and I'll put one coat on this just to show. So I'm going to put a coat on the body, and just a thin coat, and then the thicker coat, you build up the thorax. So I'm going to make sure I get in between the wing pads, and then on top and the sides of the thorax. And you want it to be a fairly thin coats to put on. You can put on some thicker ones, but I like to put on thin coats so I can build it up. And you can see how this seems to be a delay on this monitor when I spin. And you can see how that goes. And we'll just stick that. And I can probably get another couple of coats I'd put on there, half a dozen or whatever you're going to tie this fly. And then, of course, it wants to move on me. Just try not to touch it. And you would build these up in stages. And pass that around, you can see how skinny that is. And that's a big one. I do those probably, I think that's a number 12. That's a partridge Oliver Edwards emerger hook that I had kicking around. I really like that. It's a neat looking hook. Probably harder to find, but your curved scud, your 24.99 spear points, C49Ss, whatever your favorite scud or straight shank hook is. But the key to these chironomid patterns, and hopefully I've illustrated, is how skinny you need to keep the flies to be successful. All right. So let's just dump that stuff back in there. Our play area nice and clean. All right, let's move on in hatch sequence.